Today we are going to meditate a very interesting one. Of course, I tell this in every service because every service, every sermon is an interesting element in my lives, and it has changed many of our lives too. So I once again welcome you all for this English service. Thanks for joining. And today we see across the world there are so much of books which has many tips and lessons on victory, the title called Victory. So you can go to any library and you can find so many books there. So much of written documents are available today, and each of the books about victory, they have many tips and lessons inside of it. So for an example, let's take how to be a victorious person, how to be victorious in life, and steps to victory, etc. So all these kinds of books about victory are written by great writers. So they spend a lot of time in writing, in researching all the elements, the tips and the other things about this particular topic day and night. They work very hard. So these books are not written by just simply common people. It is written by great writers as well as authors who do many books, who write many books, and many professors across the world write about this victory. So they spend a lot of time, energy, efforts in writing about victories. So victories can be in any form. And also we see many scholars, they put their entire life to this particular research. They examine about many companies, about their victories, and they examine about a personal life, an individual life, and how they are successful, how they are victorious in their lives, and how they manage to be a victorious person, and so on. In the process of all these things, so many people across the world just put a lot of energy into this writing. And a lot of books are written on this topic across the world daily. Either you can find books, articles, journals about victory or victorious around this topic. So we should not deny the fact that these books really helped a lot of people globally. Just I'm talking about a topic, victorious, doesn't mean that none of the people who read all these books are just simply left without anything to fetch out from the book. So people who read all the books of these scholars, these authors, these writers, these professors, and all the great people, once they read their journals or articles, their books, what they do is they just keep on reading it, or some points will be in remembrance after they read that. So many people globally across the world have been benefited by all these tips and lessons written by these people. So today, being victorious is an essential one, right? Being victorious is an essential one today. So we see people value a person. So this world, what it does is values a person with this term called victorious. So a person is being valued and is being viewed by someone or this world by this term called victorious. So if you and I are not victorious in our life, task, whatever we do in workplace or in educational place, so people around us will not respect us, right? They will never respect us if we are not victorious in our lives. So whatever we try to speak, they hesitate to listen from us. And also whatever we do in our lives, that won't have an impact in their lives. They will just simply look at our lives and just simply move on. So we cannot leave a footprint when we are not successful, when we are not victorious in our personal life. So people, they won't accept us. They won't consider us as a person. You and I can be a person, one among all 100 and one among thousands, one among lakhs and crores, but people will not respect us, they will not accept us, they will not accept our words, they will not accept motivational talks, speech, anything, any idea, any thoughts, any quotes that we do. They won't listen to us, they won't consider them, because we are not victorious. So whether you accept this or not, this is the fact. Only if you and I are victorious, your words will speak to others. Your life will speak to others. For an example, we see a king of a country is valued by his victory, right? A king of a country is valued only by his victory, how much victories he has gained in his life, in his battle. So it doesn't matter how much talented the king is. He may have great skills in weapons or wars, training people, training chariots, and making weapons, arms, any kind of thing. Doesn't matter how much talented he is. So it doesn't matter how many people are with him. He may have thousands and lakhs of people with him. So day and night, he may be surrounded by all these soldiers and army, great number of people. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what he has. So he cannot come and tell that I have such and such thing in my life. I have a very big palace. I have very great, large number of servants to serve me. But it does not count. So what his name is all about, people don't consider that. So it may be a great name, a very famous name, but it matters only if the king is victorious or not. Victory marks a king as a great person. Many other kings come to him for help and for any other matter. If people and other kings in the other nation to come and to visit him, he should be greater among all these other peoples and kings, right? So that king has to be victorious in his battle, in his life, in his any kind of thing that he does. See how much important it is to be a victorious person. So as I have told you, just keep the king and yourself in both hands and just look. If a king is not victorious, he is just a dummy king. He is just ruling some nation, that's it. And if you and I are not victorious, you and I will be in the same position. So people and all the world and all the other things which are around us, they value us, they make standard for us by our victories, how much victory this person has gained. So how much victorious this person is in his life. So it is very important for a person to be victorious in his life. It changes one's life. So once you look at a particular person, whomever you may know, it changes the person's life entirely. If he is a victorious person, people are going to come to him and many great minds will approach him. And if he is victorious, many medias will call him and ask him, how are you so victorious in your life, in your industry, in your workplace, in your educational place? So just think this in mind. As soon as the board exam results comes out, all the media, the press, all the reporters, to whom will they go? To whom will they reach first? The person who got first mark. So just coming to this one, person who has got the first mark, the highest mark, is the one to whom all these people will run after. So it doesn't matter how much marks you have gained, it doesn't matter how much efforts you have put in your examination. It doesn't matter how much hard work you have been putting all these years to approach you, your victory defines you. If you are victorious, the press and the media and the many people, great people, will approach you directly. So they will congratulate you. They will wish best luck, best wishes, blessings to you. So just imagine this first mark student. If he is not getting good marks, even though there may be many other people who got close to him, marks close to him, like out of 500, the first place is like 498 out of 500. Many people would have got 497, 495, 496. Even though they were very close, but the talk of the town will be that person's name. So even though they compete in exam, the one who got the first mark is the one. For the whole year, his school will talk about him. All the schools will keep a great banner, big, huge banner on the entrance and congratulate him. And his relatives, they gift him many things. And his neighboring people will wish him. He will be the centripetal attraction in his area, in his home, in his school. So, victory defines a person, it labels a person. So, it changes one's life. Till that student was not even known outside of his school. Once he is victorious in his examination, he got first mark, his life gets changed. Now everybody is talking about that person. Now everybody is taking their books and going to him for doubt, for any kind of clarification. So it changes one's life. It changes one's name. So if a person does mischievous things in his school, a student, and he gets a very bad reputation, bad name, but he changes all these negative things through a great good victory, his name will be changed. They won't call, hey, that fellow, he did that wrong. No. They will label that person, they will rename that person as a different person. They will call that person with respect, with many kinds of things. So good ones. It changes one's life, one's name, one's standard. So take the student who got the first mark. He was one among all the maybe 40 or 50, maybe 60 in the class. Now, once he got good marks, his standard of life gets changed. His standard of education is changed because he is victorious. So see, we just take many things very lightly. We take victory in a very light manner. So what is it all about, just a victory? But see how it changes one's life, one's standard, one's name. So today we are going to look at one incident from the Bible which talks about this victory. Victory in both things, spiritual as well as material. So many people focus only on spiritual things. Only spiritual victory is enough, and the rest of the other things that are not enough for me. And some people will be in this extreme. Only material victories are much important for me than spiritual victories. Both things are false. If you are too spiritual and you are only victorious in your spiritual journey, you cannot impact the worldly people. So how they are going to come to you and approach you if you are not victorious in the place where you live, in the material things that you do? So if you are victorious in your material thing, in your physical thing, how can you impact spiritually? How can you make an impact to others spiritually? So both physically as well as material, they are much important. Both are equally important. So we will look at an incident which helps us to understand about this victory. So if you and I are God's people, but without any victory in our lives, it is simply something of no use. Even though you go and pray for hours, you worship God for hours, you meditate God's word for hours together, and you go for all crusades, all for meeting, all Bible studies and everything, people are going to look at your lives, right? They will look at your lives. They don't care about how much time you're spending with God, how much chapters you read for a day, or how much meeting you attend. So how much enthusiastic you are in God. They don't care about that. They even don't know about that. So if you call yourself as God's child, God's people, holy people, but without any victory in life, then calling us as God's children and God's people are of no use. It means you haven't impacted anyone's life. You haven't been a victorious person at all. So in Christian life, this victory marks who we are and how much we are successful in life. And especially Christian life, it marks us who we are. And from the book of Exodus, we will meditate today, Exodus 17, verse 8 to 11. I request somebody to read Exodus chapter 17, verse 8 to 11.
Then Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "Choose some men for us and go out, fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand." So Joshua did as Moses told him and fought with Amalek with Moses. Aaron and Hur went up to the top of hill. Whenever Moses held with his hand, Israel prevailed, and whenever he lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed.
So we see one interesting thing. Verse 8, I will read it for you. The Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. Here we see, so the people of Israelites, when they came out from the land of Egypt, from the land of slavery, they were on the way to the promised land that God has already promised Moses and the people of Israel. So they were on the way, and on the middle of their journey, they faced a great challenge in between. So the Amalekites came and attacked these Israelites at a particular place, and that is Rephidim. God's people were attacked by the Amalekites, and already we see the Israelites faced so much of challenges while they were in the land of Egypt. They suffered a lot in Egypt. They were persecuted, they were threatened, and they were beaten up. So after they came out from the land of slavery, from the land of Egypt, at the Red Sea, they even faced a new challenge ever than before. And at some distance, when they moved, they faced the wilderness. That was their challenge. So while they were slaves, Egypt was their challenge, greatest challenge. Coming out, they faced another challenge. On their way, they faced another more challenge. You see, but those things, those challenges were already huge burden and frightening thing for the Israelites. Already they were over with all these things. So burden after burden, challenges after challenges, struggles after struggle. One after another just continues to follow the people of Israel. But now these Amalekites attacked them on the way. So already they were exhausted on the way. Already they were very much persecuted and lost all their spirits and strength and energy. Now, a new group of people, Amalekites, comes and attacks these people. Verse 9 we see, Moses said to Joshua, choose some of your men and go out to fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hands. Now, after the Amalekites started to attack the Israelites, Moses told to his assistant was Joshua, one thing: to choose men and go for fighting against the Amalekites. So he told this, and so Moses instructed Joshua this particular one. Moses, the man of God, also told Joshua another thing. He first told that choose men to go and fight against the Amalekites. Another one he told to Joshua, that is, tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the staff of God on my hands. Two things are said by Moses. Joshua and the other men to go and fight against the Amalekites. Second one is Moses and some men to go up to the hill. So some people on the ground, on the plains, and some people on the hills. So when we look at Moses' word, it seems to be what this strategy is all about. What strategy is this Moses making? A certain group of people on the plains, and a certain group of people on the mountain, on the hill. So why does Moses tells like this? In the verse 10, we see that. So Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered, and Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. Here we see one interesting thing. Joshua did as Moses commanded. He obeyed the words of Moses. He did not change his plans. As soon as Moses leaves the place, he did not have any other idea, or he did not try to do something different from what Moses had instructed or commanded or ordered him. He exactly did the same thing. He obeyed the words of Moses. He respected the words of the servant of God. Joshua and his team, one team, fought the Amalekites on one hand, and on another hand, we see Moses, Aaron, and Hur, three of them. These three people, what they did was they went to the top of the hill. Now, Joshua and team were busy fighting below the hill. They were struggling very hard because Amalekites are not just some simple group of people. They are just trained to fight. They are worst people. Ruthless people. So Joshua and team are very busy fighting below the hill, and Moses, Aaron, and Hur were busy with another important thing. What did these three people did on the hill? Why Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up there? So what is the reason behind all these things? Why these three went to the hill, telling Joshua to fight the battle, taking some of the people along with him? Why these people went up? What is the reason behind it? So while we just read all these things, we come, just when we read this plainly, we can think that, so there is a reason for it. And was Moses afraid that he went taking two of his other people with him? So the reason for it is that Moses was not afraid of the fight that was initiated by the Amalekites. So he was not frightened, he was not afraid that he went up to the hill and hid himself in the caves, or just told Joshua that after the fight gets over, just inform me and I will come down, and I'm so scared of all these people. No. He was not at all afraid. So not that Moses was trembling, look at all the circumstances and the things that were going on below, and took two of his people along with him, telling that let us run to the hill so that we three will be saved from the Amalekites. or you people just stay with me for a support, and I will stay here for quite a time, and I will move afterwards. No. Moses had another purpose. He was not afraid of trembling. He was not at all afraid. He did not fear the Amalekites. He did not tremble at these Amalekites. He had the fullest faith on God. So Moses, we see a great person, a great man of God, servant of God, not because of afraid or trembling or thought of running behind or running away. Not in these things that Moses went up to the hill. He was faithful in God. Moses was a very faithful servant in the house of God, in God's presence. So what Moses did will surprise us. So what Moses did was an unusual one. Because usually people don't do that. When a king or when a leader is there, the leader takes initiative and he does things for his people. He wages war against the enemies, but see here, it's a different thing. It's an unusual thing, and Moses' tactics is different here. His way of approaching the Amalekites was entirely different. You see in the 11th verse, that is today's important verse. 11th verse it says, as long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. What was Moses doing there was, he was lifting up his hands. So I just had a personal thought. It is personally my interpretation. After I read this, I got to know that there is something interesting here. So I believe that I am on track, and I have observed rightly. God alone knows. According to my observation, why did Moses held up his hands? Can anyone answer this? Why Moses held up his hands? Why did he lift up his hands? To pray, close to the point. Moses, the man of God, does not go to the hill just lifting up his hands for the whole day. There is something interesting behind these things. So according to my observation and my thought, and what I received from the word of God in this passage is that Moses, yes, of course, he took Hur and Aaron, his brother, went up to the hill. He lifted up his hands. Actually, the lifting up of hands is actually praising God, worshipping God. So if you are in a spiritual warfare and anything, you just simply keep your hands up. What does it denote? Does it denote something? When the enemies, let's take both in physical as well as spiritual. You go up to a place, just lift up your hands, that's it. What does it denote? Just lifting up your hands, that's it. I believe that Moses held up his hands, meaning Moses was lifting up his hands and worshipping God there on the hill. So, his hands were straight up to his God, the Savior, who rescued the people of Israel from the land of Egypt. And this Moses had seen all the wonders and miracles that this great God has done in his life and the people of Israel's life. He was stunned and astonished by looking at all these things. You know what it is to praise God and what it is to worship God. Because he was not an ordinary person to lead the people. He was the leader appointed by God himself. So Moses very well knew that only the battle will be on our side, we will be winning a battle only if I worship the Lord on the mountain, on the hill. Holding up his hands, when we read this, we assume that he was just lifting up his hands, that's it. No. Just remember, he was a leader as well as a servant of God. So, a servant of God, a man of God will not idly sit and just lift his hands. What he must have done there is, he must have raised his voice and worshipped and praised God, lifting up his hands. So, this is what I have observed from this. So, as long as Moses was worshipping and praising God, glorifying God with his hands lifted up, the Israelites were winning. They were defeating the Amalekites, their enemies, and they just moved forward and defeating these enemies. So as long as Moses held his hands and praised and worshipped the Lord, so as long as hands were straight up to God, the Israelites, the people of God, just overtook the Amalekites and they were winning. And another interesting thing is, whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. So whenever he straightened and held up his hands, the Israelites, his group won. They were defeating the Amalekites. And whenever his hands got lowered, the Amalekites were winning these Israelites. The first one you may probably understand, lifting up hands, worshipping the Lord, praising Lord. But the second one is, and why did Moses lower his hands that the Amalekites were winning? You see, practically speaking, if you are in a place of worship, to church, if you are in a fasting prayer, from morning till night, how many of you can pray to God continuously? Continuous prayer without even taking just small nanosecond of rest. From morning 5 till evening 5, is there any possibility? Like, let's take kneeling down. Praying is fine. Of course, people pray continuously, I have seen. Just think, kneeling down, putting knee down, kneeling and praying, or lifting their hands and praying from morning 5 till evening 5. Can a person do? What will happen to him? Right from morning 5 a.m. till 5 p.m., his hands are straight up. How does that person feel? Practically speaking, his hands will get numb. The flow of blood will be not there in hands. So practically, when we look at the pastor or any believer who prays like this, they cannot do continuously, right? They cannot do continuously. We have to understand that Moses was also a human, right? Not that he's not just he is servant of God, that he has all the powers of God. No, he had the intimacy with God. He has seen and he has done God's wonders among the Egyptians. Of course, God used him. He very well knew, and he did supernatural things when God allowed and God gave the gift of doing miracle. But on the other side, he was 100% a human being. So, as long as he praised and worshipped God, lifting up his hands, the Israelites won the battle. As long as he was fainted and his hands got numb and he lost all his spirit and energy, and as soon as his worship, the voice of worship just gets reduced little by little, the Amalekites overtook him. So we see, lowering his hands doesn't mean purposefully putting it down or lowering down due to the physical incapacity. incapable of withstanding such great position throughout the day. So, when he was in the fullest strength, fullest peak of his worship, the Israelites won. And when he was tired and he was exhausted little by little, his team were being defeated by the Amalekites. We also should remember that the temperature of the wilderness, how does a temperature in a wilderness will be? And that too, it is not like a Kodaikanal, Kerala, Ooty, any Munnar, all these kinds of beautiful places. It was a wilderness, so the rock was hot, the air was heat, it was very much hot, and the things that were around the place were very much heated up place. A battle place is kind of a very heat place because all the moistures and the sand that goes up and here and there. So we see the weather condition as well as the strength of a person. He is 80 plus, right? Moses is 80 plus. Look at his age, the weather condition, his strength and energy. This all were the reasons for lowering his hands. So we must understand that this is what we are going to look at, and we have looked all these things. And what we understand from this, Moses went to the hill taking Aaron, his brother, and Hur, and telling Joshua to do this and that and everything. He held his hands, the Israelites won, and he put down his hands, the Amalekites won. What do we understand from this? That is more important. So, as I have told you about the victorious thing, victorious life, the secret of being victorious for you and me is worshipping the Lord. How many of you believe that? How many of you agree with me? The secret of being victorious in your lives depends upon how are you worshipping your God. So how to be victorious in Christian life is, one of the greatest secret is this one, lifting up your hands before God, which is worshipping God. Once you start doing this, you will be on the winning side. Your battle will be a winning battle. So, for today's meditation, 3 things that are to be done while worshipping God. There are 3 important things to be done while we worship God. The first thing is self-realization. Just note it down, self-realization. Whenever you go and worship and approach God, lifting up your hands, you need to remember one important thing. It is self-realization, which means, Lord, I am incapable of doing things. Lord, because I am just a mortal man. I am a man with flesh and bones and with blood, that's it. Incapable means that thinking that you cannot handle completely the things that are ahead of you. Realizing that I cannot do the things that God does. I cannot be a God or an angel and can solve my problem, I can fix my problem, I can own my battle. When we come to worship Him with our hands raised up, we must first realize ourselves. We are coming before God. Not that, Lord, I can do anything of my own. I am capable of everything. I will never realize anything. I know that I can do everything. No. Even Apostle Paul tells that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Though he was a great person, he was a scholar, he was a philosopher, he was a theologian, great man of God. Such great man of God is realizing himself. He's telling, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It is that Christ is the one who strengthens me so that I can do all things through this Christ. And when we come to the hill which means presence of God, whenever we come to the hill, to the presence of God, to the church, to His fellowship, and worship Him with our hands lifted up, we must first realize that, Lord, I am not a great person. I cannot do all these things. I cannot defeat my enemies. So I realize that I am incapable of doing many things, Lord, because I am just a simple being in your eyes. And the second thing is that, number one is self-realization. The three important things to be done while worshiping God is that, while you lift up your hands, remember the second one, self-emptying. Emptying ourselves completely. When we approach God in worship, lifted up our hands, it denotes that, Lord, I just empty my thoughts, I just empty my plans, I just empty my ways, I empty myself completely, whatever things that I have planned, and I am not going to ask you to fill my cup, because already I have been planned all these things. No, not that. But telling God that, Lord, I have drained out all the plans, I have taken out all the things that were inside of me, and I have come to your presence to worship you. And as I lift my hands to your place, to your holy temple, to the heaven, I just empty myself and submit completely to your will. Self-emptying is important. So throwing away all our plans, all our strategies, all our visions, and emptying ourselves. Visions and plans, that doesn't mean that God-given vision and plans. No. Ourselves thinking one plan, a personal, not so God-given plans. I'm talking about that. So throwing away all these things, all our plans, and going to God. Throwing away all the old stocks that are inside of us, any kind of matter, and just going to His presence, lifting up our hands and telling, Lord, I have emptied myself completely. And three things to be done while worshiping God, and while we lift up our hands to God, before God, remember this third one, final one, self-surrender. Surrendering ourselves completely. So one of my thoughts is that surrendering ourselves completely is the only requirement from us by God to reveal and to do His greatest miracle in our lives, to do His greatest wonders in our lives. Only just come to His presence. Just come to His presence and tell that, Lord, I submit myself completely, Lord. I surrender myself completely to you. I surrender myself completely to your will, Father. It's like dedicating, deciding, delivering yourself into the hands of God. That is self-surrender. So, as soon as a person is being caught by a police or by an army, what the person does, what he is expected to do, the officers tell him, please raise up your hands. Which means he is realizing something. Maybe he would have done wrong or right, doesn't matter. At that time, he is realizing that he is incapable. He cannot escape from that. And the second thing is, he is emptying himself while raising up his hands. He is telling, I'm just empty, I'm just nothing. And while he is asked to raise up his hands, it means, I'm surrendering to you. Whatever you do, whether handcuff or whether the police beats him, lifting up his hands is that you can do whatever things that you want to do for me. So just always remember these three things: self-realization, self-emptying, and self-surrender. Moses, the servant of God, did the same thing. So, while he lifted up his hands and worshipped the Lord, he self-realized, he realized himself. He emptied himself. He surrendered himself. And we see at the other part of it, God gave victory. So, whenever he was fainted in the spirit, Hur and Aaron, they were supporting Moses in worshipping the Lord with hands lifted. They supported Moses in that. So, if you and I are fainted, God will send somebody else, maybe in our own family, to be a support while worshipping the God. Always remember these three things. While your hand is up, held up to God in worship, it means you are realizing yourself. It means you are emptying yourself. It means you are surrendering yourself completely. Let's look to the Lord in prayer.